Hi everybody, this is James. Just a really quick disclaimer at the beginning of this video. Steve and I actually recorded our review of Hirokazu Kore-eda's Monster way back in June, just weeks after it had premiered at Cannes. Unfortunately, we thought we'd lost the video when Steve's laptop succumbed to an unfortunate red wine incident. Fortunately, we found some of that raw video and audio and been able to put together something for you to watch today. We hope you enjoy it.
You ought to be in pictures. You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my friend Steve. And this episode, we are talking Hirokazu Kore-eda's Monster.
Hey, but you know the drill. We really could use subscriptions to deep dive. If you haven't already subscribed, just go ahead and hit that button. And just as a reminder, we do spoilers here, so you've been warned. James?
Yeah, I understand that you have taken umbrage, that you have a bugbear, that I'm asking you to review like specific movies like
No.
Kore-eda's Monster and
No, I really was looking forward to seeing Kore-eda's Monster, especially after Broker was one of my top 15 movies last year. I think one of the dilemmas is it was at least 20 minutes too long. And it's like if I go to see a decent speaker and I kind of like what they're saying, but then they don't end and they keep saying they're going to end and it doesn't end. And I end up getting pissed off. And I think my last 20 minutes in Monster was me looking at my watch going, when is this going to end? And how many doorways, windows, and assorted portal am I going to have to watch these two kids just walk through slowly? I felt like I was watching someone's home movies. Remember when I came out, I was just saying I felt like I was just forced to watch someone's home movies and so yeah, I was disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, so was I to a degree. I mean, yeah, Kore-eda is normally an incredibly reliable filmmaker, you know, and he's obviously made some fantastic movies. But actually, already with Broker, I felt that it was it had some issues, particularly towards the end. And I feel that that's very much the case with this film. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what the public opinion is of this one, because not many people have actually seen it yet. It played at Cannes, right, where the jury at Cannes awarded it the best screenplay award. But in terms of actual general public, I think it only opened in Japan this month, a couple of weeks ago.
There was two young girls in front of us that had tears in their eyes, and I'm thinking, okay, they're obviously impacted in a way that I wasn't. And I mean, to be fair, I there was elements, like I said, I enjoyed of the film. And we should go into the idea. It's essentially a single issue seen through three different perspectives, and it's a technique not unknown to us. In fact, one of our first films that we did, The Last Duel, was essentially that.
Yeah.
It was a particular incident viewed through three different people's perspectives, and those kind of films are always fun. It's enjoyable because I think it opens up our human nature, that we see things just completely differently, and it's fun to observe those types of situations. And so I was kind of like, strap me in. I could see where this is going, especially after the second perspective came out. You kind of know there's going to be a third one. But I just felt with each perspective we were getting diminishing returns, to the point that by the third perspective, through the boy's eyes, what is supposed to be the most tugging at your heart, it's supposed to be the most revealing, as we're seeing this genuine what ends up being kind of a same-sex attraction relationship among two young boys, it ends up just becoming a sludge I got to get through to get to the end of it. I was disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that it was this sort of multiple perspective kind of story going in, and it was only sort of when it sort of shifts and jumps back in time. I was like, oh, okay. And it's interesting because that is a traditionally Japanese way of storytelling, because the film that everybody references when you talk about this kind of story is Rashomon, which is one of Akira Kurosawa's greatest films. But it's one that we have yet to do, and I really hope that we get to do it in our Asian Classics series, and is arguably the film that introduced Japanese cinema to the West. It's kind of, it was what, 1950, 1951, and it's widely regarded as the movie that introduced the world to Japanese cinema. So it's now got to the point where when you get a film like this that tells a film from multiple perspectives, it's considered a pretty well-known shorthand to say, oh, it's a Rashomon narrative. And I think a number of the examples of those kind of films that you see in later life, Last Duel being a more recent one, is I don't remember many other Japanese films having done it, certainly not in recent memory. So it was kind of fun when that just unfolded. It was like, oh, great, it's like Kore-eda is doing a Rashomon story. The story itself is very different. But as it unfolds, you're getting it from different points of view of different main characters. And you're right, every time it shifts backwards, you're supposed to learn more. And I think the first two versions, you see the story from the mother's point of view and then from the teacher's point of view. By the time you get to the third one, there's really only one question left to be answered. And that gets answered almost immediately when you see the story from the child's point of view. It's so there, and then that turns out to be the longest of the three acts, if you like.
And that's what I mean by the diminishing returns. Absolutely. Because like you said, like yourself, I didn't realize it was going to be three perspectives. I thought this was going to be a traditional, a monster being this horrible teacher, and how this parent is going to fight for justice against her child who's suffering injustice at the hands of a mean teacher. But once obviously it went to the second perspective and you're seeing it through the teacher's eyes, you're thinking, oh, okay, now I see what they're doing. And then I thought, okay, it's a little slow and a little bit, some of the incidences are a little convoluted and concocted, but it's fine. I'm enjoying it. And I really, in that the third perspective, like you said, the length of it, it just seemed to go on forever. And there's a pacing issue, there's an editing issue. And obviously, Kore-eda he's got the reputation and he can do what he wants to create the film that he wants. But he's never been
accused of being in a rush to tell a story. His pacing is typically languid, and he takes his time, and that's fine. That going in. I think it's one of the things that you expect from a Kore-eda movie. You're like, okay, it's going to be slow. The narrative is going to creep up on you somewhat, and he tends to have stories with very strong child characters, strong young characters in it, and he's very good at picking child actors here. And I think that remains to be true. You've got these two classmates, these two young boys. One of them physically and developmentally seems to be much younger than the other one, although they're classmates. And the question is, who's the monster? The movie's called Monster. It's like, is it the kid that's the monster? Someone has set a fire. Someone might be bullying someone else. Kids are showing up after school late with bruising, with burn marks on them. They're cutting their own hair in weird ways. They're drawing strange pictures, and there's this mantra about who's the monster? Who's the monster? Are you a monster? And you're not quite sure what's going on. Is Sakura Ando's son, what's the boy called? Sorry, Minato. Is he a bully? Is he being bullied? Is the teacher, played by Eita Nagayama, is he the bully? What is going on? And that is what slowly unravels. But as I said, the first act scene through the mother's point of view, where she goes to school and she learns that the teacher has hit her child and wants to get to the bottom of it, and is basically stonewalled in a very strange, almost irritating way by the entire faculty. And I actually felt that was an incredibly powerful but frustrating sequence. The scene where she's sitting in the faculty room with them, and they're all just not giving her anything, and they're just giving her these like pre-prepared responses to everything. It's incredibly infuriating for her. But I thought that was really well done, because at that point you don't even know as a viewer what exactly is going on and what has happened, and you really feel for her frustration. And I
almost leaned over to you at that moment and said, she's experiencing what it's like to be an expat in Asia.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm sure you must have a lot of this kind of experience being, obviously being a teacher or working at a school in your day job. pretty close to the bone. But then you see in the second point of view, where you see from the teacher's point of view, that you've got him completely wrong, and he's a very different kind of person to what you saw. The rumors about him aren't true; they're unfounded. You know, he's not this sort of uncaring, manipulative, bullying kind of teacher, but actually, you know, he's a more sympathetic character
who's out at the call girl bar. I mean, that was like these
this
rumors
is the
began,
original,
you know.
Yeah, that's the initial rumor, is like he was spotted at the hostess bar, which then the sort of the inciting incident that signifies, okay, we're telling the same story again, is there's a fire at the hostess bar, you know, then and in their small community, it's sitting in the middle of town, it's just burning down in the middle in the evening, and it's like, well, what happened to that, and how is that connected to what's going on? And so by the time you get to the third point, you've learned a little bit more about the two kids. You've learned a little bit more about Yori and his background. You've learned that both boys are from broken homes, essentially. You know, Saori, Sakura Ando's character, her husband, the father, has died, and then in Yori's family, his mother has left, and his dad is an alcoholic and is, you know, pretty terrible and irresponsible. And quickly you realize, okay, neither of them are, or the little one is being bullied, but not by Hori,
the teacher,
not by
Minato,
but by other classmates. And actually they're really good friends, and they are each other's only friend, really. And then there is this kind of exploration of whether that relationship goes further, and whether that's in an innocent way, or whether in a romantic way, or just a kind of codependent way, or whatever.
Yeah, it kind of went right up to the edge, but it never and it left you kind of. I was assuming there was a same-sex attraction, but I suppose weird, you could pull back from that.
Yeah, because of their age as well, because they're both sort of prepubescent. So you wonder whether, you know, there's any valid, you know, whether you can have a kind of a serious romantic yearning for somebody, you know, before then. And I think, you know, the jury is out on that. And then it comes to a very non-committal, ambiguous ending, which by the time you've spent all this time with them, and it has been suggested that, you know, they may have come to some harm during a big storm towards the end. It's left kind of slightly ambiguous, you know, whether they're okay or not at the end. In a way that was again frustratingly enigmatic, as opposed to it's supposed to kind of be sort of magical escapist, something like that. And I really felt that it didn't land impactfully, basically.
I thought it was interesting. It leaves you with that feeling. I think I was just excited it was over. and again, I know I'm being unduly harsh, and I almost wanted to give separate scores for the different vignettes in here, because I was left with such a bad taste in my mouth after the third that it really you know, it just made the rest of it toxic in my mind. But as I'm talking it out with you, as which often happens, I'm remembering the parts I really did appreciate. And like you mentioned, my working in a school, the idea of the dynamics between the accusations that sometimes are leveled at a teacher and the reality in the classroom, and there's a lot of things that people bring to the table, and the exploration of that I thought was wonderful. But at the end, if you want to watch 30 minutes of two young boys playing together for 30 minutes, that's basically what you're getting, is half an hour of watching two young boys play together. And I know cinematically we can kind of say, wow, it's beautiful and it's captivating, and we can use all kinds of words, or we can use boring, mundane, and a little bit what was the word we used? Hubris. Hubris.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, when it got to about halfway through, I think by the time it was the second part was ending and it was moving into the third part, I was thinking I was completely on board, and I was like, this film's really good. It's really working for me. You know, and I was kind of thinking how highly I was going to raise it, and then the third act really kind of, sort of does let it down in all the ways that we have described. Not even because of where it goes narratively, but just it's the approach to it, the execution of it. It drags it out when it should be really tightening everything up, and there's no revelation. This is where you're looking for all of the answers, and like I said, it kind of it solves any confusion over what's going on very, very quickly, and then it's just about spending, like, literally half the movie. It's just about spending time with these two young boys and seeing how they built this little kind of sort of base, little sort of sanctuary together in a discarded train carriage that has sort of fallen down the hillside. And you're like, okay, that's all good and well, and this is a sort of safe haven that they have found for themselves, but to what end? And then I felt that the film didn't really pull it all together, but just let it all kind of unravel in a way that proved wholly unsatisfying. And it's a shame because, as I said, what I expect from Kore-eda specifically is, he looks at non-traditional family dynamics in a lot of his movies, and how these sort of surrogate families are put together, and how they sort of endure and survive. And there's a little bit of that, the folk, as we've said, that the two main family units, if you like, are both broken and problematic, and the relationships within them are there's a communication breakdown between parent and child, and he always finds very strong child actors who deliver really sort of emotive, naturalistic performances, and I felt that was all very much the case here as well.
Agreed.
And I
thought both the young boys were striking appearances. They were fun to watch, and their interactions initially were fun to watch. And like you said, if they had made it tight and impactful, it could have really worked. But it just kind of sprawled out on the table and just ran over the edges. And sorry, I cut you off there, but I had to get that out.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so it feels like we're kind of on the same page. And it's just ironic somewhat that the award that this won was best screenplay at Cannes, as opposed to any of the other awards. And I know that they generally like, or are only allowed to give one major award to each film, just so that nothing sweeps the categories. So to signal out the screenplay felt particularly strange in this instance, as opposed to the direction or one or more of the performances or anything like that. So it will be interesting to see how this one is received by the Kore-eda fans, because for me it feels like along with Broker, for the second time in a row, actually, after Shoplifters, which is his great film that won the Palme d'Or, and I think is one of his best. Broker, I felt it let itself down towards the end. In a kind of similar way, it kind of it sort of teed up a whole lot of possibilities, and then just kind of let itself peter out a little bit. And that's even more in evidence here. And as a result, more disappointing.
Well, I think also one of the reasons I enjoyed Broker was I do like the idea of the non-traditional family and the reliance and what he put together in that film. I really resonated with in a way that I didn't in Monster. But also what was missing in this film compared to Broker, and I can't compare to Shoplifter, is there was a level of whimsy and humor in Broker that I really resonated with. It was fun to watch. The interactions, yes, there was at times there was some serious, moments of some concepts that were deep, but by and large there was a lightness and a whimsy and a humor as the different people in this group just ping pong bounced off one another, and I enjoyed that. I came out of Broker. That's why it topped my films last year, or not the top, but was in the tops. And this film just doesn't come close. I left with this. There was a buildup. I love where this is going. Nope. And
it's funny because the great takeaway from this film seems to be that parents are terrible, aren't they? Particularly when they have to deal with schools. We're introduced to Saori, Sakura Ando's character, and we she's a sympathetic single mother, and she's struggling towards looking after her son, who seems to be distant and troubled somehow. We're not entirely sure, and then she sort of comes into the school, and is very, very sort of frustrated and gets sort of argumentative when she doesn't get the answers that she wants. But then when it's put into the broader context of the other perspectives, you're like, oh, actually, she's kind of really annoying. You know? And actually, she was the one sort of approaching this in the wrong way. Sure, she was, you know, incredibly emotional and only thinking about the welfare of her child. But she comes steamrolling into this school, and when it's put in the broader context, you're like, oh yeah, you got this one completely wrong.
No, it's and there was, like I mentioned previously, there was some really convoluted elements within this story too, like with the principal, and she had run over, her husband had run over a child, and then she hadn't.
Well, as it turns out, she had run over her grandchild.
She had run over but she let him take the blame for face reasons, and there was a level of melodrama that I just felt was concocted and just didn't work well. We're just pulling things out to try to you know, get a emotional response out of me, and there's an element when that happens in a film, I feel like it's not natural. I'm being manipulated. In Broker, I didn't feel manipulated. I felt like this heartwarming and these elements I was naturally responding to. In this film, I felt like I'm going to take this and this will get a reaction. I'm going to take this and then get a reaction. But I never felt that in the screenplay and the story, it gels in a way that makes sense overall.
No, I completely agree with all of that. It felt, when it came to the principal, I was almost expecting, because of the runtime, because where we were in the runtime, it felt like we were about halfway through the movie when it started the third and what proves to be final chapter. I was like, oh, are they going to do 4 perspectives? Because I think we've got time for there to be a 4th one. And so I was expecting the principal, because it begins with the principal and clarifying what had happened to her and why she's behaving the way that she is. But it feels, and as we kind of sort of alluded to, she is mourning the death of her grandchild. I think it's granddaughter, who was hit by the car, and the story going out is that her husband accidentally reversed over the child, but then it is revealed later on that actually she did it, and he's taking the fall for her because, and I think it is just for face reasons, or because it wouldn't look good for her job, you know, if she'd run over a small child. And it's like, okay, and that's why she's behaving kind of strangely when Saori goes to see her at the beginning. But I'm like, that's not enough.
No, it's concocted, and it doesn't make sense.
It's contrived. It's contrived, and it just feels it feels like they had to come up with an excuse afterwards. And I would have been quite happy to have had the whole story told again from the principal's point of view, because I think there definitely is a lot more going on there with her character, but the film just chose not to do it.
Yeah, well, with the runtime of being just over 2 hours, you could have done 4 30-minute perspectives, and it would have been much more something you could tolerate than that very elongated third perspective. Well, James, we're going to need an instrument of measurement for Monster. What are we going to use as our?
Yeah, I was thinking about this one, and there are some dark answers. There's the little firelighter thing. That one.
Yep.
That's nice and enigmatic for people who haven't seen it yet. Yeah. Should we go with that? What do you call that? A little electric firelighter?
A little lighter, just a lighter.
Yeah,
just a
little lighter.
How many lighters to burn down nightclubs are we going to? Are we going to give Hirokazu? Let me say this name correctly, and then we can edit this. Hirokazu Kore-eda.
He gets it. That's been James, a long time coming.
James, what are we going to give Hirokazu Kore-eda's Monster? What score are you going to give?
Okay, I mean, for this one, it's definitely less than the sum of its parts. You know, I as I said, I like the performances. I didn't mind the pace, and about halfway through, I was like, this is great. And it really was just the third act that kind of let it down. So I'm not going to pan it. You know, I think there was some good stuff in there, and so I'm going to give it a solid 3 electric lighters out of 5.
I concur. I came into this, I was going to give it a 2, but again, my discussion with you has modified it. I am reminded of the elements that I did enjoy. However, I really, for me, it went off the rails in that third act, and that,
narratively, quite literally, it does to some degree.
yeah. So I really got to say, I can't wait for his next film. I need to see Shoplifters.
Yeah, you do.
I loved Broker, but I really got to hit the pause button on this one. I'm going to give it 2.5 firelighters out of 5. And again, I would give the first 2 segments, the first 2 perspectives, 3.5 at least 3.5. I thought they were wonderful. I enjoyed that. The third act really took it down for me. Ultimately, I got to give it 2.5.
I can live with that.
Well, how do you feel about that? Do we have any Kore-eda fans out there that are saying, no, this is absolutely, this was heartfelt. This was touching. Like I said, we were seeing some girls sitting in front of us, had tears in their eyes. This obviously resonates with a segment of people out there. It just didn't resonate with James and I. Let us know how you feel in the comments below. We'd love to start a dialogue with you. James?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly, I think, regarding the relationship between the 2 boys, because I felt it didn't really hit home. It didn't land the way I think Kore-eda intended it to towards the end. It felt like an afterthought almost, and it didn't entirely justify what had come before it either. If you feel differently about that, and I'm sure there'll be people who do, let us know. As Steve said, we would like to hear from you.
Till next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. Your voice.